Richard Goldberg, with so many things swirling around the average American today, including trying to put food on the table and gasoline in their vehicles, it's understandable that Iran is probably not on their radar. But it is not understandable when it's not on the radar of the national press, when it's not on the radar of the Democrat-controlled Congress, when the President of the United States doesn't talk about this. They are about to break out with nuclear weapons, and it's as if nothing is going on, and one day we're going to wake up and we're going to be faced with this. Do we have the willingness, do we have the resolve to address this in a way that it's probably going to have to be addressed militarily, is my guess? What do you think?
Mark, we have the ability to do it if we had the will to do it. We don't want to have military force be your first option. That's always true. You want to try diplomacy, you want to try economic pressure, you want to try political tools, covert tools, etc. But we have to have a bottom line for our national security. We cannot allow the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism to become a nuclear power. That would be a disaster for U.S. national security interests. You think we have problems with North Korea? Get ready for Iran, North Korea on steroids at some point, not just for us, but for our allies as well. And so what we do need to understand is that this White House has not shown any willingness to use force to defend U.S. interests in that way. Look at what the Iranians have done to the Biden administration over the last year and a half. Ceaseless attacks on U.S. troops and forces and interests and institutions throughout Iraq and Syria, attacks against our allies through their proxies from Yemen into Saudi Arabia and the UAE, attacks against Israel. There's been almost no response, no response. There's been 2 pinpoint strikes on the Iraqi-Syrian border over a year and a half of dozens and dozens of attacks against U.S. troops. We had a contractor die in Iraq last March. No military response to that, unlike what we saw President Trump do with the killing of Qasem Soleimani. So if I was the Iranians, and I see already you're not willing to respond militarily to low-level threats, and on top of that, I watch what happened in Afghanistan, I watch what's been happening with Ukraine, and I think to myself, you know what? I could go forward to that nuclear threshold. President Biden's not going to stop me. He doesn't want to use military force. And so unfortunately, I don't think we have the political will right now in the White House. I think we need to show that political will in the Congress. Again, this is about restoring deterrence, not necessarily using force. We don't want to have to use force, but being willing to use force and making sure the Iranians know that we are willing to use force, because otherwise we will leave this problem to the Israelis to solve. And I believe in the end they will solve it if we do not.
Here's the problem, Richard Goldberg. Their diplomacy is appeasement. And so diplomacy is not going to work. And as you pointed out and these other folks point out, they're already there, the Iranians. They're there. They're where they need to be. And it's impossible to talk them out of it now. And now they have the Chinese and the Russians, probably the North Koreans, working with them and supporting their efforts. They are a terrorist regime. They are the institutionalization of effectively of a terrorist state. And this is something they've been wanting to do for decades. And now they've done it. Under President Trump, he was choking them economically. The government there was teetering. The Biden administration comes in and reverses everything because it's loaded with these Obama appointees who were wrong in the first instance, whether it's the State Department or the National Security Council, whether it's their negotiators. These are all Obama retreads. This is the surrender crowd. So we're not going to be able to diplomatically resolve this. This is my concern. And my second concern is I do not think this administration will take the steps necessary, the force necessary to stop the Iranians. And if the Israelis and the moderate Arab states don't or can't, you're exactly right. We're going to have a nuked up Iran that talks about hating America and thinks the afterlife is the place that they want to be. In other words, an incredibly dangerous state. Another one. What do we do then?
Well, it will be in a complete foreign policy disaster because it will change the dynamics of the region. Right now, we're not dealing with Goliath here. We are dealing with a relatively small state with some means to defend itself. But we are a superpower. We are the United States of America. If we wanted to take out their nuclear program and some key military sites, we could absolutely do that. There would be some consequences. We'd have to prepare for those. But I don't believe the Iranians want to go to war with the United States because they know they will lose, and they will lose very, very badly. And so in the end, if we don't have that sort of confidence in ourselves as a country, to be able to draw red lines in the sand for our own national security, then you will have, as you said, the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism with nuclear weapons, with missiles at some point able to reach the continental United States. And at that point, it's really a change of dynamic. Look what Russia is able to do, pushing us around already because they are a nuclear power. Do you want that to be life for the Islamic Republic of Iran too? The answer has to be no.